Чуєте нас, бачите нас?
Good evening, dear Berlin.
Ще ні.
Ще ні. Кажуть, що вже є. Пише лайв.
Є, можна починати. Good evening and welcome to tonight's live event. Is Ukraine anti-corruption infrastructure? We are holding this conversation not only because it's a turning point for Ukraine's democracy, but because it's crucial to speak openly, especially for international audiences, to ensure that Russian propaganda cannot distort or to weaponize the situation in Ukraine or its own goals. Just hours ago, President Zelensky announced a new draft law that could potentially change the course of this debate. We will discuss it later today, but now I want to introduce myself. My name is Irina Shulikina. I am CEO of Vice, and tonight, joining us live from Kyiv region, just one day after taking part in the protest herself, is Ina Nellis, leading strategist communication expert, co-founder of German-Ukrainian Bureau, one of the most prominent voices of Ukrainian civil society here in Germany and in Ukraine. Ina has long been in the forefront of reform efforts in Ukraine, and including the media and institutional sectors. Ina, thank you very much for being with us. We have 45 minutes for our discussions. And dear guests, please write your questions in the comments. Our team will try to ask them if we will still have time. And yeah, let's start. Dear Ina, how are you today? We are so happy that you have joined us. And yeah, please help us to understand the situation which is going on in Ukraine. Yeah.
Mama, this is my second job, which was not in my title, which sounds already like an interesting enough life, but I'm also mama, and I apologize in advance if my 2-year-old son, who yesterday also took part in this protest action in Kyiv, will join for a moment our air. So, despite the Christmas star behind me, it's very, very hot in Kyiv last days in all senses, in both political and temperature-wise. So I hope also that electricity shortage will not stop our interview earlier than we planned, right? Because there is still war and still Russian attacks, which is hard to predict. Otherwise, the mood is quite serious and mobilized here among experts and civil society, but not desperate or demotivated at all. My short, which used to be a vacation to motherland, to Ukraine, turned to be a full-fledged working visit. And for the last 3 days, me and my partner, Mattia Nellis, we are following the events on the ground, collecting expert voices, having a lot of inside conversations with politicians, those who represent the party of the president and opposition, to understand what's going on. Because what happened is there
May I ask you?
Yep.
I'm very sorry. I don't think that everybody from our audience understand who is NABU and what is SAPO. Can we start with the fundamentals? Can you explain to the audience what it is? Who are those people?
Exactly.
Yeah, what's happening?
I was exactly moving towards the theoretical part. Now should be some nostalgic music, because this is what my youth was about building these institutions. NABU, which is National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, is the part of so-called anti-corruption institutional infrastructure. Is it already boring enough for evening? But for you to understand, this is one of 4 key elements of this structure to deal with the top level corruption in Ukraine. And why youth? Because establishing of this institution was the consequences or one of the positive outcomes of the revolution of dignity, which happened 2013, 2014, when people came to Maidan. Probably your audience knows what happened next. But our European path started 10 years ago, and people on Maidan demanded for the change of the system. We didn't want just to change the names of corrupt politicians and authorities. We were not satisfied with President Yanukovych flee the country. It was not enough. We wanted to change the system. We wanted to prevent other people in power from abusing their power and from stealing from the budget. That's why expert community, together with the learning a lot from abroad and with international expertise, designed in a way the creation of the whole new anti-corruption system, which consists of prevention and policy making, then investigation, prosecution, and the court. So all 4 stages of the process are covered with the newly established institutions, which were founded. First of the institution was the National Anti-Corruption Prevention Agency. In Ukrainian, NAZK was established in early 2015. A little bit later, a few months afterwards, so also 10 years ago, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau was established. This one actually deals with the top-level corruption. This is investigative, independent law enforcement agency. Later on was established special anti-corruption prosecutor office. And the very last, in 2019, in this chain, the High Anti-Corruption Court was established. So we have already for a few years all this institution being functioning. And you know what? They started to show results. And that's why they became dangerous for those who are still somehow made it to parliament or to government or to somewhere else. So that was like the story of the last 10 years. And that's why it's so shocking that what we already as civil society, as Ukrainians, started to perceive for granted, having these institutions,
Can you tell us a
now
little
is
bit
in
more?
danger.
Can you tell us a little bit more? Have they achieved something in this 10 years? Or maybe they struggle a lot? How was that for them?
This path wasn't easy. And of course, no one is perfect, and experts have some questions to the capacity or to the effectiveness of these agencies, or to the some selective approach in choosing some cases and so on. But without these institutions, Ukraine was a totally different country. Ukraine was really a country perceived as one of the most corrupt in the eastern part of Europe. And now we are demonstrating extremely good progress in the area of fighting corruption. Yes, corruption is still there, but it's incomparable to 10 years ago. And this is all thanks to this newly established anti-corruption infrastructure. And Mama, as my son thinks. So what happened? We have now dozens of top-level investigations of corruption. I even really Googled the official reports, not only the civil society assessment of the effectiveness of these institutions, but also some official statistics from NABU, Anti-Corruption Bureau, and the prosecution office. So these offices, you need to understand, they are not big. These are really boutique compared to other law enforcement agencies. They count maybe like up to 500 workers each. Yes, some of them smaller, some of them bigger. They're incomparable to police. They're incomparable to the prosecution, yes, of Ukraine, prosecution service of Ukraine, or the security service of Ukraine. They're incomparable. This is like really niche boutique agencies which were created from the scratch with the new people selected on the open competitions, with the new values, with the new salaries, with the new conditions of work, up according to the highest standards. And that gave them the independence of running cases against oligarchs, against which was you could not imagine this 10 years ago, that some MPs or some ministers would be put to trial because of what they are doing, because previously there was no institutions to prosecute them, to investigate, to bring these cases to the courts, because courts are also corrupt. So we had to create everything from the scratch to finally cut this tail, you know. And what else they did? They, for example, included and brought such a I think loud corruption cases from Ukraine, which you may also have heard as Rotterdam Plus. That was when we had President Poroshenko, and it was about the overpricing electricity for consumers, yes? Or, for example, Odessa harbor case, also like infrastructure, transport, big logistics, and hidden procurement related schemes. They were all killed, yes, killed by anti-corruption newly established bodies. Or we put to trial, we brought to justice such a top-level corrupt authority as the head, or as the former, now he's former head of the State Fiscal Service, Roman Nazirov. It was also an incredible, non-precedented case. As of early 2014, so after 9 years of war, including 2 years of running in the conditions of the full-scale war, when some detectives, some prosecutors from these bodies went to the front line to serve, and both these institutions also took an additional load of work dealing with war crimes of Russian invaders. So they had overloaded with the work, but were still demonstrating the result. So for the during the 9 years of their work, they launched over 1,200 criminal procedures, served notice of suspicion to more than 1,000 of corrupt officials and representatives of like state-run enterprises, local authorities, and so on. They sent over 400 cases to the court, anti-corruption court, and anti-corruption court achieved over 100 court verdicts.
Wow.
And it works as a prevention. It works as a prevention because suddenly bad people in the system see that they are not, they do not have impunity anymore. They can be brought to justice. And that's the most important quality change in our, I would say, architecture of the whole state service we have now. And of course, what is super important, and the very last before your next question, that establishing of this institution is one of the cornerstones of Ukraine's EU accession plan. Thanks to establishing of NABU, Anti-Corruption Bureau, we were granted with visa liberalization regime as a state. So because it was so highly recognized by our foreign partners and international community as the very, very efficient for Ukraine, for Ukrainian context, Ukrainian realities, way of preventing and fighting top-level corruption.
Ina, thank you so much for this very insightful description of our anti-corruption structures. Our followers start asking the questions, and I want to say for people who are watching us, you can also ask your question on the YouTube. And there is follow-up question to what you just said from our viewers right now. Actually, who was controlling NABU and SAPO till now, and how you can prevent corruption within NABU and SAPO itself? Like who was checking them?
Yeah, that's the great questions. So the idea is that they were independent, and they have to be independent. It means that there is no political appointment of leadership. The leadership is selected through the open call with selection commissions, and that was actually the key of success of launching these institutions, that it's through open call, that it's not by president or by government appointed person who then will be loyal or under pressure of these institutions. The point was of creating them absolutely independent and secured enough to run cases potentially against the crooks in government, parliament, or in office of the president. So they were designed in a way to be independent. And then the leader of these institutions, each of them was selected through these open calls with commissions, and in the commissions there were representation of our international experts and communities, so not only Ukrainians, but also at this stage, at the launch stage, it's reasonable to engage reputable and knowledgeable people from abroad to demonstrate the really quality process of selection, the leadership. And then the leadership was building each of these institutions according to their procedures. So they used to be independent, but of course each or detectives were to have the access to state secrets, yes, so limited access information to work with this information. They were running through the whole procedures, like long procedures, full check, all detectives, full check before being hired. They were checked by the Secret Service of Ukraine. They were looking into their connections to occupied territories, visits to temporarily occupied by Russia, looking for relatives in Russia, assets in Russia, whatever in Russia, previous cases and stuff. So they were very well screened by Security Service of Ukraine, not secret, Security Service of Ukraine. And of course, we also have Державне бюро розслідування, it's like State Investigation Bureau, also one of the institutions which can potentially look to the way these institutions run. But what happened this week, that at the same time, simultaneously, SBU and Security Service of Ukraine and other law enforcement agencies, they, through violating all the procedures, without having this special paper from court, which allows them to run these checks, they made in parallel 70 checks all over Ukraine against in the offices of these institutions, against the families of their workers and employees and so on. So what happened was unprecedented pressure with violation of law and looking into connection with Russia. Some of them were accused in treason and so on, but that was only one part of what happened the last days.
But this is actually the other questions from our viewers. Can we assume that any Russian agents were present in those structures?
We can assume whatever we can assume, but we have law enforcement bodies and procedure of investigating such cases. What happened now, it went against the procedure. It looked more like the action of pressure on this institution in order to prevent it from being capable of any activities, right? And followed by this very ad hoc changed and voted in the parliament a law which limits institutional independence of this institutional independence of this institution. You understood what I mean? So killing the whole idea of having independent anti-corruption bodies. Oh mama 999 is crying my German son, indeed. Oh mama 99, that was one of the slogans on the protest yesterday. So it shows that this is the puzzles of one story. And this, I do not believe in such coincidences. And the fact that the president immediately signed the same night this awful law shows that it's not so easy. But it happened only yesterday, and today we have the new plot of this series, which gives us more hope.
Let's go to this plot in the end. We will leave the cherry on the end. Can you tell us more actually what is this controversial law about and how it limits or destroys anti-corruption structures?
It's a very, very terrible law, which was voted and cheered by MPs from mostly presidential party, but both Batkivshina, maybe you remember such a veteran of Ukrainian politics as Yulia Tymoshenko used to be repressed by Yanukovych and stuff, but our former prime minister. also by OPZZ, so these are leftovers of Yanukovych politicians in the parliament, 263 MPs, and we need 225 votes for the law to be adopted, voted and cheered this revenge against the grant eaters. And we are not a colonial, was screaming Yulia Tymoshenko. We will not be dictated how to fight corruption. It was awful. But the content of this law is awful as well. So what it does, it kills the independence of the system, because it puts a general prosecutor of Ukraine, a politically appointed figure by the president, on top of the both Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecution Office. It means that general prosecutor have access to all cases of top-level politicians, can stop them on every stage, can move some of them forward, can close some of them at all, have access to this information at the stage of the investigations. And such cases, detectives are building for years, collecting enough evidence to bring oligarchs to the court, you know. And I think it was done to protect potentially someone when the election cycle is hopefully after the war is ended coming soon. So just building the instruments in advance. And here is Marco. Please bring me your planchette. I will find your news. Sorry guys, this is live.
All good, all good.
999. Marco, okay, now you need to show up.
But,
this is Marco 999. So it ruins the whole idea of being independent, you know, from the politicians and from the presidential administration. And that's why it was so alarming. And despite sounding very expert and very difficult, a lot of people actually understood that it's not about abbreviation of NABU, SAPO, and other institutions I just described you. It's about the idea of breaking the public agreement, the societal agreement, which we were building for 10 years, breaking this promise by the presidential office, by the authorities. And people said, no, this is a red line. And later on, you know, this is tonight will be the third night when Kyivites, and not only Kyivites, but also people all over Ukraine are going to the protest and expressing their opinions on this paper shields, posters. And one of the posters is actually the real power is owned by people with posters. It was written on it, and it's so true. It's a little bit playing with the name of the party of the president, who is called Servants of People.
Before we move to the part, actually, how was the protest and what's going on there, I want to ask you, like, how come that so many parliamentaries have supported this law? Like, how come that it's so quickly passed through, and it already seems like a Russian influence, you know, because it's destroying the fundamental of our pro-European Ukrainian vision, which we have proven like in 2013-14.
I don't see Russian influence in voting for this draft law. I assume that there was a very vertical way of collecting voices from the presidential party, which is the majority in the parliament, and then all others, let's say politicians with questions, they understood that they are also in, because this is actually a super worrying. But out of these 263 votes, 80 votes were by MPs who are the suspects of the figurants of investigation by anti-corruption bodies. So they have a direct conflict of interest, and they were voting not for the policy, they were voting to protect their ass. Let's call it by its name. And it was like really terrible. But we also have to say that there were MPs from the opposition party, let's say, of civil society, which is Holos, and some MPs from Sluga Naroda as well. Europейская Solidarność, European Solidarity by ex-President Poroshenko, his political party, who voted against, who even blocked the Tribune and tried to stop this thing. So it's not hopeless, but it's awful. I see more the risk of Russian propaganda now using the pictures of the protest and try to convince someone that Zelensky is not legitimized. We need to call for another revolution, and so on. And this is where they're very good and professional in twisting these messages. I've been yesterday to the protest, which was the second day of the protest, but I also talked to people who were lucky to be at the first day, but I'm living now outside of the city. For security reasons, I was not so mobile to drive there at night. But yesterday we stayed, and we've been there quite long, talking to people, feeling this atmosphere and mood. Believe me, Ukrainians know where their red lines. No one is calling for zrada, which is like betrayal. Zelensky should be out. These authorities should be out. Revolution, I don't know, power to army and stuff. No, we are calling to the common sense of politicians to roll back this damage which they now cause to anti-corruption, independency of anti-corruption system and the whole EU path of Ukraine. That's what we are doing. People have very strict limits inside of themselves. And the whole idea that these protests are happening in the country of war, peaceful protests. Believe me, there is no police even standing. No, like these buses of police which we saw on the smallest demonstration in Russia. I think there are no possible demonstration ever. But it's very, very peaceful. It's a family atmosphere in a way. Marco, my son of 2 years old, was not the only baby. People are coming with pets, people are coming with whole families, and 80% of people are younger than 20 or younger than 25, let's say. And it's incredible, vibrant atmosphere of uprised Ukrainian society who says, no, 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 that's not what we agreed to do. This is our future. Talk to us, hear us, let's do as you promised and as we agreed.
That's a pleasure to hear voice of a next generation of Ukrainians on the background of your son, who's also joining the protests. And I thank you that you start already talking about the protests, because like it's a last resort of Ukrainian democracy. Ukrainians always been known for that, like to go and express their opinion when nothing else works. Why protests are so important? How they
Because democracy is important, and the fact, again, it's super important. You need to understand that Ukraine is democracy in war, and expressing political opinion is possible during the war as well. I was afraid of provokers. I was afraid of some, I don't know, some initiated by provokers, pro-Russian people aggression there, and then telling that, look, for this reason, we need now to close and forbid everything. And God knows what can happen indeed, because we do have Russian agents in Ukraine, because we understand that they are working not only with information, but they're working also with youth, with kids. They are hiring sometimes kids to not explain what they want them to do for social media, whatever, like, and pay them to bring some explosives, but of course they do not know that they just bring some packet, yes, some package to certain places where they can harm our authorities or veterans or whatever. So it is from security reasons, of course, it's a very brave act of mass gathering, but it is not. It is not pushed back by authorities, not at all. And what we see is happening after the 2 days of protest, and I mean the events of today, from which you started, and which I think time-wise to which we are moving now, shows that we were heard. So what happened today? we gathered how to fight, how to
Yeah.
roll back the damage for the system. We have a few ways, and we actually what is happening now, 48 MPs registered another draft law in the parliament. It is registered today, which actually cancelled everything which is connected to anti-corruption institutions in the draft law adopted by the president and signed by the president a day before. And this draft law was already revised by President Zelensky. He said, yes, this is a good balanced version, kind of. I'm satisfied. There are like enough instruments to fight a Russian track in anti-corruption institutions. And then today, President Zelensky himself introduced the same or introduced a new a draft law, which he promised answering the protests, which brings back, restores the independence of anti-corruption bodies, but still, like really, this is event like the draft law by president is available maybe for 1 hour. So I just skimmed it, yes, and I think it's like a very first fresh reflection. It looks like I would, and other expert would need more time to have all comments on this draft law, but it looks like it restores the independence of anti-corruption institutions, but introduces some new instruments of controlling or prevention potential Russian connections in institutional, in anti-corruption bodies, as well as in other law enforcement agencies, not only those who are fighting corruption. And this is like a requirement to be checked by polygraph, you know, this machine which checks whether you're lying or not. I don't know how it is in English, but whatever. Ran by Secret Service of Ukraine. Well, it was already here and there used, but now it will, according to this draft law, it is proposed to be a requirement. Let's see where we are going. We know that there was numerous rounds of closed doors discussion with president and the vice prime minister on euro integration, and SBU people and other people, our partners, called them, the ambassadors of G7, called them, discussed them. There were public announcement as well. And because the situation is serious, and until this new law, one of them, will be voted in the parliament, and even afterwards, we cannot now relax. And that's why tonight will be the next round of protests, because yet the last word is after the parliament. And I hope that we will have enough of common sense and responsibility of our responsibility as politicians who represent the country in war, not to create this additional damage to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because this is like, it's just too much.
Look, our followers and viewers are asking, like, what should Ukrainians do, and Ukrainians in Germany and Germans do? Like, what should be avoided in public actions to prevent misunderstanding or to harm Ukrainian image? Because people here, Ukrainians here and Germans here, really want to help, but they don't know how.
Thank you for such question. And indeed, first is to verify the sources of your information, and such a conversation with me or with other experts on Ukraine, anti-corruption experts, is a good opportunity to understand what's going on, in fact. Second, the situation is serious. Do not misread the mood of Ukrainians. Ukrainians, this is not Maidan, this is not a revolution. We can put in brackets yet, because we don't know whether the parliament, how soon they will vote for the necessary law. Now I just see like this pop-up messages from our Telegram channels where I read news like this. Draft law by Zelensky has the status of urgent. So we hope that they will come back to the parliament despite the summer holidays, very short, which they have for a week, but they will have to vote it the next days. So I hope that the situation, we will see the solution, the good solution, the next days, maybe even tomorrow, maybe Monday, Tuesday. Meanwhile, and what is in generally very necessary, this is our call to action to international partners and to Germany the most, because Germany is one of the strongest democracies and economical powers in Europe, and the donors and partners of Ukraine who help us to stabilize the economical situation, develop our hromadas, communities, provide a lot of reforms during war, which provides us weapon. So the call to action is be demanding partner. Make a conditional aid provision to Ukraine. Now we also have conditions, and for example, another puzzle of this pressure on anti-corruption institution is that Ukrainian government do not want to appoint the head of the economical bureau of economical security selected by this open call, telling that he's connected to with Russia, violating all the procedures. And the price of not appointing this person is 5 billion euros help to Ukraine, because this was a conditional appointment. So we need to see more of such concrete milestones with detailed, we as a civil society and expert community, we of course are in dialogue with international partners, and we will help to create this milestones map which Ukrainian authorities can follow to introduce all the criteria of our EU accession path and to get the necessary financial support for Ukrainian state in war. So just protect your democracy, protect your freedoms, and do not forget about Ukraine. And I think that by this action, we demonstrate that Ukrainian democracy is resilient. And believe me, these 3.5 years of full-scale war, there was no protest. This is the first mass protest, because Ukrainians do know the red lines. And it means that if there is no other protest, trust us, rely on us. Ukrainians do feel when there is really a serious danger and turning point for Ukrainian reforming process or state. Now it's the turning point, but as of now, it looks like we're turning the right way.
Thank you, Ina. Dear friends, if you still have 10 minutes to ask your questions, our expert.
5 questions, 5 minutes,
5
7.
minutes, I'm sorry, 5 minutes, yeah. And there is one question actually from our viewer. You partially answered it, but I will just read, maybe you can figure out better. We see just now the news that NABU supports presidential draft law number 13533. It was shortly published before our conversation, but still we can reflect on this. Can we reflect this draft from so soon?
This draft law of Sosun, this is the one which I mentioned. This is like which 48 MPs registered today. We called it Savsun, but it's not only Savsun. There were actually representatives both of European Solidarity Party, some of Sloga Narodas, one of the Batkivshina, I guess, MP. So there are cautious people in every political, not lost, there is hope in every political party except for PZZ so far, to be a co-authors of this draft law. As I said, it just cuts off the previous and cancels everything which is about influence on anti-corruption institutions from the adopted by president and signed by president yesterday law, while the newly represented draft law by President Zelensky cancels this as well, looks like, but also introduces additional instrument of these checks of detectives and workers of these institutions, which satisfies him as the one which prevents Russian influence.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much. And will this new law solve the situation? Will it resolve the anger and the protest? Will it help?
I think that that it was a very it will probably end the protests, but I think that it will be very hard to bring back this feeling of security that our anti-corruption infrastructure is stable, untouchable, and protected. So another second call to our international partners is to boost the support of resilience of anti-corruption institutions and civil society who are fighting corruption, because civil society activists who are fighting corruption are also under pressure the last week. And we have the case of Vitaly Shabunin, who is very clearly politically prosecuted for his activities, because running cases and being one of the very strong voices of fighting corruption and building such institutions as anti-corruption bureau and stuff. Of course, he has enemies. Yeah, he made himself a lot of enemies during the last 10 years, and it looks like that now he is under pressure from the authorities. The previous system, current system, pushes him back, and this is very dangerous signals. So these are alarming signals, and we are very, very mobilized now. We are working now in crisis mode, but very motivated as well. Yeah, we understand now that we cannot perceive as for granted. We cannot take it for granted. We still need to protect this achievement of Ukrainian society as well.
My dear Ina, I know the time is running out, but very important question. Will
The
this,
last one, I hope.
yeah, this is the last one, and I will wrap up. But will all the situation damage our accession to EU?
It can. It can. If this draft law, if people would not go to the protest, if society would not react on time, if president would not and MPs introduce the alternative draft laws, if the parliament will not vote one of them, it will be basically the very big end of our EU accession track, because this is the basics of so-called fundamental clusters, rule of law, anti-corruption reform, and so on, which is one of the biggest demand, very right, that it's one of the biggest demand towards us in order to open any negotiations on any cluster. So yes, I think it's already slowed down. I think it has, what I read from a different like insider information, analytical articles about the negotiation process as well. We could have opened these clusters in autumn. Now I think it will not happen, because we lost this weekend, we lost this week, and it will influence the negotiation process with EU member states such as Hungary and stuff. And of course, it also gave our enemy, Russia, the big argument, which they can manipulate now a lot. And that's why my last call again, please critically analyze the information. And thank you for being tuned. Thank you for having your interest and support of Ukrainian process. We are a democracy. We are reforming ourselves during the war, and it's double job. And we still have some inner enemies to fight as well. And thank you for helping us to be on the right side of history.
We have a very sweet comment from our follower. Can we do the same live chat in a week or so to follow the news? It's very interesting and useful. Thank you very much.
Happy to hear. Let's
Thank you
see
very
where
much.
it goes. And thank you for being with us. Thank you for inviting.
With us was Ina Analysis, strategic communication expert and co-founder of German-Ukrainian Bureau, prominent voice in Ukraine civil society. She has led key reforms effort and media initiatives, including the Center of United Action, live from Kiev. And as we always say on our demonstration, the real power of Ukraine lies within its people. Thank you so much, Ina. Have a great day and safe evening. Bye-bye. Слава
Bye-bye.
Україні!
Героям слава.